Picture this. You meet a guy who casually mentions he's the Prince of Diamonds. Before you know it, he's flying you around in private jets, treating you to five-star hotels in Paris, and whispering all these promises of absolute luxury and total security right into your ear. You're probably thinking, wow, I've actually found the love of my life, right? Well, actually, scratch that. You haven't found love at all. You've just walked directly into a trap. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are bringing a highly calculated 21st century financial heist completely out into the light. We're going to dissect the incredibly seductive illusion built by the man who the world came to know as the Tinder Swindler.
So to truly wrap our heads around how this happened, we've got to set the scene a bit. Think back to 2018. For thousands of women across Europe, swiping right on Tinder felt like this really exciting portal to a better life, A chance at genuine, modern-day romance. But as we've all kind of learned the hard way, in the digital age, the person behind the screen is rarely who they actually claim to be. And for one guy in particular, this insanely popular dating app wasn't a place to find a partner. It was a literal hunting ground. He wasn't just out there breaking hearts. He was a predator, bleeding his victims totally dry, taking their savings, their dignity, and honestly, their entire sense of reality.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the digital mirage.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the contrast here between reality and total fabrication is just wild. On one hand, his real identity, Shimon Hayut, a regular guy from Bnei Brak, Israel. But the persona he constructed? Simon Leviev, the billionaire heir to a magnate everyone knew as the King of Diamonds. Now, he didn't just borrow a fancy name. He orchestrated an absolute masterclass in identity construction. He hijacked the digital footprint of the very real Leviev family to craft a persona that was, quite frankly, impenetrable. If you met him, got curious, and did a quick Google search to see if he was legit, the search results basically confirmed everything he said. It showed you a wealthy, powerful, incredibly glamorous heir. But a fake name alone isn't enough to steal hundreds of thousands of dollars. To understand how he got the money, we need to pull back the curtain on the actual mechanics of this fraud.
Which brings us to Section 2, Anatomy of the Scam.
The way he operated was shockingly consistent. It was a ruthlessly efficient grooming strategy. First up, he deliberately targeted successful, vulnerable women in their 20s and 30s, women who were genuinely just looking for a real connection. Step 2, he led with the lifestyle, not the money. A first date with him was never just grabbing a quick coffee, it was a luxury hotel in London or a Michelin-star dinner. Step 3, and this is crucial, he completely fast-tracked the relationship. He's showering them with affection, sending massive bouquets of flowers, and rapidly bringing up moving in together, getting married, having kids. He was moving the goalposts of reality so incredibly fast that his victims didn't even realize they were playing a game. And then, once they were totally hooked, he dropped Step 4, manufacturing a sudden, utterly terrifying security crisis.
Put yourself in their shoes for a second. You're sitting at home, you're deeply in love with this amazing guy, and suddenly, boom, your phone lights up with these frantic, distraught messages. The whole narrative shifts instantly. Suddenly, he's claiming his rivals in the dangerous diamond industry are trying to take him out. He's sending photos of his bodyguards bleeding in the back of an ambulance. He is under attack. And then comes the twist. Because his enemies are supposedly tracking his every move, this so-called billionaire claims he can't use his own bank accounts. He needs untraceable funds to pay his security team, and he needs them right this second. For the victims, this didn't feel like a robbery at all. It felt like a desperate rescue mission. They thought they were just helping the man they loved during his darkest hour.
Now, what's really interesting about this whole setup is how it functioned as a brilliant, modern Ponzi scheme. The fraud operated with this ruthless simplicity. He'd take money from victim A and use those funds to pay for the luxurious private jets and fancy dinners required to woo victim B. Then, once victim B was hooked, he'd extract massive loans from her, tens of thousands of dollars, often maxing out American Express cards taken out in her name. He'd use a tiny fraction of that to pay back victim A, just enough to keep her quiet, and use the rest to keep the whole illusion spinning. To keep everyone on the hook, he'd send over fake bank transfer receipts, or checks that were basically guaranteed to bounce. He was running a one-man pyramid scheme where the currency was literally love, and the end result was absolute financial ruin.
Let's shift gears to Section 3, Unraveling the Myth.
It's really easy to judge from the outside, but the emotional devastation he left in his wake is just hard to overstate. It's absolutely crucial that we recognize Cecily, Pernilla, and Aileen not as naive, gullible people, but as highly intelligent, career-driven professionals. They were completely manipulated by a master of psychological warfare. And the damage he inflicted, it went way, way beyond draining their bank accounts. It shattered their fundamental perception of human kindness. I mean, think about it. How do you ever trust anyone again when you realize that the person holding your hand, looking you in the eyes, and promising you a forever was simultaneously calculating the absolute limit of your credit card?
$200,000. I just want to let that massive figure sink in for a moment. That is the amount Cecilia alone lost after being pressured into taking out multiple massive loans just to save her supposedly billionaire boyfriend. She was left drowning in crushing debt and dealing with profound psychological trauma. The human cost of this digital illusion was terrifyingly real.
And this brilliantly illustrates the turning point of the entire story. Because his downfall, it didn't start with some massive police sting, it started with the victims themselves. When these women finally realized they were all dating and funding the exact same man, they began talking. They started connecting the dots. They took their stories straight to the journalists at Norway's VG newspaper, and together they meticulously tracked his digital breadcrumbs all across Europe. The press definitively proved there was zero link to the real Leviev family, and they dug up his past fraud convictions in Finland. Because of this incredibly brave collaboration, the whole myth unraveled. By 2019, Interpol finally caught up with him at an airport in Athens, trying to travel with a fake passport.
Let's look at the fallout in Section 4, Consequences and Lessons.
So this global fraudster finally gets caught. You'd expect a swift, heavy hammer of justice to fall, right? Well, take a look at the shocking discrepancy in his punishment. Simon Leviev gets extradited to Israel, but, and this is wild, he wasn't actually charged with the massive multi-million-dollar fraud he had just committed all across Europe. Nope, he was charged with older crimes, stuff like forgery and fraud that he had fled from years prior. He was sentenced to a mere 15 months in prison, and he only served 5 of them. He literally walked 3 in 2020. Our traditional legal systems, which are pretty much built for local crimes, entirely struggled to contain a digital predator who could cross borders faster than the law could ever follow. Fast forward to today, and he still maintains a huge social media presence, completely denying any wrongdoing.
So, what can we learn from this explainer? We've distilled all the source material down to a really concrete checklist for digital trust. Number 1. The old too good to be true rule is absolutely your best defense. If a billionaire stranger suddenly needs to borrow your money, yeah, it's a lie. Number 2. We really have to look beyond these highly curated, heavily filtered digital realities. 3. We need to normalize asking the difficult questions early on in a relationship. Don't be afraid to probe a bit. 4. Rigorously verify identities. Don't just trust a quick Google search that only validates what you're hoping to see. And finally, be highly skeptical of anyone demanding financial involvement in the early stages of a romance. Love might make us vulnerable, for sure, but it should never, ever be a financial liability.
Simon Leviev may be walking around as a free man today, but his story stands as a permanent, chilling warning about the dark side of modern digital courtship. We live in this hyper-connected world full of people who are more than willing to trade their basic humanity for the illusion of a private jet and a designer suit. The ultimate question this leaves all of us with is this: when those red flags inevitably appear, are we actually willing to see them for who they really are? If you found this explainer compelling and you want to stay updated as we break down the world's most complex cases, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Your support is what allows us to keep digging into the data where everyone else just stops. Thanks so much for watching.